friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using some MFT images. I'm using the Birth-Yay critters, and then I've got a few accessory images from the Cutiosaurus, like the clouds and grasses and the palm tree. I'll be coloring my images with Copic markers today, so I've stamped them in MFT Extreme Black Hybrid ink on some Copic friendly cardstock. The first combo I'm using is W00, W1, and W3, and I'm going to use those to color in my rhinoceros down at the bottom of the stack. I'm laying in my shadows with the W3 on the underside of his body and under anything that would be casting a shadow, such as his party hat or his horns. And then I'm going to blend that out with the W1. So I'm making sure to scrub over the edge of that darker color and pull it towards the center. This is a large image with a lot of ground to cover, so I want to make sure that I have a really nice blend as I transition to the lightest shade. So once I'm happy with that mid-tone, I'm going to grab my W00 and I'm going to fill in all the rest of that space. So he's got shadows on the underside of his body because he's casting that shadow, and then he's got shadows above because the stack is also casting shadows down on him. I'm also going to take the W1 once again and just really blend that transition and go over it with the W00 once again. And then I'll take my W5 and color in his little toenails, and I'm also going to color in his horns using the W5 for the shadow, and then pulling that color forward with the W3 and finishing with the W1. Next I'm going to work on my monkey, and for him I'm using E55, E57, and E59. I'm starting with the E59 and laying in my shadows, and he's got some really thin little areas, so I'm making sure to hold my marker almost up and down and just use the very tip of that nib so that I can easily get into all those small little spaces. Then I'll blend that out with the E57, just pulling that darker color out. And then once I have that done, I'm going to finish him up with the E55. I'm just working on the darker areas or the furry areas of his body first, and then the smoother areas like his face I'm going to color separately. But while I have these markers out, I'm also going to color in my turtle's shell and the trunk of my palm tree. And I just went ahead and did those off camera so I wouldn't waste your time using the same color combinations. So for the monkey's face and the rest of his skin, I'm going to use E50, E51, and E53, starting with the E53, and then I'll pull that color towards the center again with that E51, so that's going to be my mid-tone, and then I'll finish him up with the E50. For the rest of my turtle, I'm going to color him with YG61, YG63, and YG67, starting with the YG67 and laying in my shadows on the back side of his legs and underneath his shell and a little bit on his neck where it's poking out. Then I'll pull that color out with the YG63 and finish him up with the YG61. I'm going to let him dry a bit while I color in my grasses and palm fronds, and then I'll go back in and add a little bit of dot detail to his body with my darkest color, just to give him a little bit more texture and a scaly look. I decided to take some artistic license with my toucans. I wanted something other than the traditional black, but I didn't want to depart too far from that. So I decided to go with a rich navy. I thought that would be something that would just add a nice pop of color to the card. So I'm using B34, B37, and B39. I'm starting with that B39 and laying in my shadows on the main part of his body just at first, and then blending out with the B37 and finishing with the B34. Then I'm going to color in his tail feathers and parts of his beaks and wings with that same combination. So again, just using the very tip of my marker to get into those tiny little areas. These markers have such a nice fine point to them that it makes it really easy to do. Just use a delicate hand, not a lot of pressure. And I'm also going to color in the other toucan with the same exact combination off camera. The next combo I'm introducing into my color palette is Y000, Y11, and Y13. I'm going to color in the toucan's face and the first ring on his beak, although I'm going to go a little bit darker with the yellow on the first ring than I am on his face. I'm making sure to keep that just a little bit lighter and add a little bit more of that Y13 on that first ring. I'll also color the bottom of my cupcake yellow. Then I'm moving on to YR00, YR01, and YR02, and I'm going to use those to color in the next ring on the toucan's beak and also one of the stripes on the wings. While I have these markers out, I'm also going to use them to color in my balloon, and I decided to leave that in the video because balloons used to be very challenging for me, and they might be for some of you as well, so I thought I'd just share how I do it. So I first do a dark kind of C shape over on the left, and then I take my mid-tone and make a ring all the way around the inside, but I leave a little bit of area on the very edge for kind of like a rim light. And then I just fill in everything except a small sliver on the right hand side, which I leave white for a shine mark. I wanted to introduce kind of a corally pink tone, so I'm using R20 and R22 for that. I'm going to color in the rhinoceros's party hat, and then I will also color in the insides of his ears with the R20. I'm going to give all the critters some rosy cheeks with that R20, and I also used the R22 to color the cherry on the top of the cupcake. The last combo I'm using is BG10 and BG11. I'm going to use those to color in the final ring on the toucan's beaks and the stripes on their wings. And I'm also going to use them to add a little bit of shading to my clouds, just going around some of the little scallops with the darker shade and then softening with the BG10, and then even bringing in my colorless blender to soften even further. And now I'll trim these out with the matching dies. For my sentiment, I'm stamping out the Sending Endless Birthday Wishes with that extreme black hybrid ink on the bottom of the same piece of paper that I used to color my images. And I'm going to die cut this with a banner die so that I can add that to the card at the end. While I have my Misty out, I'm also going to stamp on the inside of my card. I'm using another of the monkey images and the sentiment that says, "Let's celebrate you." And the cardstock that I'm using is Grout Gray from MFT. I've trimmed down some pattern paper from the On Point Patterns 6x6 using the Elegant Rectangle Stacks and also the Grassy Hills Dynamics. So I'm going to glue those down to a piece of cheap white cardstock just to add some stability so that I can use this as my focal panel and pop this up. So I'm going to add the grass down at the bottom, and then the chevron blue is going to be my sky. I'm going to add my sentiment strip next. Normally I would save this for the end, but I wanted to make sure that it was perfectly spaced down at the bottom. So I just added a little bit of liquid glue to the back of that. Then I can grab my animal stack and make sure that there's going to be enough room. I will add some more liquid glue to the back of that, and then I'm going to use that sentiment strip to really ground that image on the card. And I'm going to do this by tucking the back feet behind the sentiment strip and leaving the front feet hanging over top of it. So it just looks like he's standing on something solid and not just floating on that large grassy area. I'm going to add the palm tree over on the left. Just lift up that balloon and tuck that behind so it incorporates that better into the scene. I'll take my two little clouds and fill up the space at the top of the sky on either side of that stack with both of those. And I'm going to stagger those at different heights just to make them look a little more natural. Then I'll take my grasses and do the same thing, just taking up some of that space and really making my scene look nice and full. So I've got one underneath the palm tree to kind of push that palm tree back even further since it's small. I'm going to add the gift over on the right hand side, and then I'll add some more grass in front of that, overlapping just a little bit to kind of ground that into the scene. And then last but not least, I've got my second little toucan. So I wanted to make him look like he's flying up to greet his friend. So I'm going to shift that larger cloud. Thank goodness I used liquid glue, so I'm able to easily do that. And then I can add my toucan over top. I'll set that aside to dry while I work on my card base. I've got some more of those on point patterns, and I'm going to adhere those down to my card base. This very delicate coral chevron was die cut with the A2 stitched rectangle stacks set 2, so it has just a little bit of a border around it. And then this gray stripe, I just die cut at an angle using the same die, so it ended up cutting it at an angle, so it kind of slashes across the card and just gives it a different look. I added some foam tape to the back of my focal panel, so I'll peel off the release papers and then line that up really well with the top and bottom and both sides, and then press that down into place. And I decided to leave it free of embellishment and just let all that coloring shine since I worked so hard on it. So there is another peek at the inside, and that completes our card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give the video a thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and you can also hit that notification bell if you want to be updated when I upload a new video. If you'd like to stay inspired, here's 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy, so you can check those out. Thank you so much again for watching. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.